Hey everyone, what's up? So the last time that I did a video, I was 38 weeks pregnant. I will say tomorrow, I will have a 1 month old. I'll be 1 month postpartum, which is just like mind blowing. This past month has gone by so incredibly fast. I cannot believe it. I'm embracing mom life, so hair's a mess, no makeup, still in my pajamas, but I love it 100%. If you guys see me looking over here, I'm checking on my baby. I am home, and yeah, being a mom has just been one of the greatest blessings. I love my baby. Like, he's literally like my husband's twin. He looks exactly like him. But this video, I'm gonna be doing several like pregnancy / delivery, postpartum with diabetes videos. I feel like on YouTube there's not enough videos like this. So I definitely want to, help someone out if you have questions or if you're trying to do research on how delivery and everything goes as a type 1 diabetic. So I did not go into labor naturally. Unfortunately, I had to be induced, which is fine. I was induced on August 2nd. Yeah, August 2nd at 2 a.m. is when we had to be in the hospital. So the first thing that we did was we drove to the hospital. We packed our hospital bags, packed a lot of snacks for my husband mainly. And per my hospital's instructions, I could eat a light meal before induction. We were going for a vaginal delivery. So if you were to have a C-section, you couldn't have food like that. But for a vaginal delivery, you could. So that night, I believe I had McAllister's. It was just a sandwich and some chips just to kind of tie me over. I actually don't think I got chips. I think I got soup in a sandwich. And I want to say it was the broccoli cheese soup, which was really, really good. So I had that. And then I have had lower sugars pretty much those couple days before induction. So my lower sugars were like ranging in like the 60s, which is okay when you're pregnant per my certified diabetes educator. So like it was okay. I drank a lot of root beer before we went in. You can only have clear liquids whenever you start the process of induction. So I went ahead and just started having some root beer just to keep my sugar up. And also it doesn't have caffeine in it. So I am not much of a huge caffeine drinker. I will drink a cup of coffee, but that's about it. So I would drink some root beer. Ever since then, I will say I have not drank root beer, I don't think, since I've had my baby. But anyways. Okay, so they did the paperwork. We went into the hospital. It gets really surreal when you walk in the hospital with your bags and you're just like, oh, wow, this is kind of crazy. Next time we walk out, we're going to be having our baby with us. So that's super cool. So we go in there. Obviously, you have to get screened for COVID. So have you been COVID tested, which just to let you guys know, with our hospital rules, you could only have one visitor, which was my husband. And you had to be COVID tested before you had a baby. My husband did not have to be COVID tested, which I thought that was really weird because he was with me the entire time. But I had to get COVID tested, so it was 2 or 3 days before I had to go in to get induced. I had to go get a COVID test, which I was negative. And obviously, if you do have COVID, per the person that took my COVID test, if you do have COVID while you're delivering, obviously you're still going to deliver because you got to have the baby. It's just a different way of how they take care of you and baby. But I was negative, so we didn't have to worry about that. So we go in, we get induced. 2 a.m., they did the paperwork. They got us signed in. They took us to a room. You do have to dress down, so just put on a gown that they give you. And one of the first things they had me do was to sign a form saying I was in control of my diabetes. So I was wearing my Omnipod. It was on my my stomach. It was higher up. So if for some reason I did have to have a C-section, that it wouldn't be in the way. I think he's waking up. Also, I had to have my husband sign that form too. If for some reason I became unconscious or I was physically unable to watch my diabetes, he would be the one that would be managing it. I did wear Dexcom. I want to say it was on this arm, exactly where it was now, right here. I did not want to put it right here while I was in delivery in case when I'm holding my son, he was to hit it, and I just felt like that would be like super painful. So I had it on my arm and I had to sign that form. That was one of the first things they gave me. Another thing that they gave me was a log, which I have not logged my sugars like with a pen and a paper probably since I was first diagnosed, which was like 5-ish years ago. So they had every hour, so they would have like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., so on and so forth. It was like a chart, and you would need to log your sugars. Now, they had told me whenever I first came in, every couple hours is fine. But when I was actually in active labor, I had to do it every hour. It also had places for like insulin, basal rate insulin, carbs, like insulin to carb ratio, all that stuff. I did not do any of that. The only thing I did was to mark my sugars every hour. Most of the time I had my husband do that for me, just because it just took one thing off of me. So I had my husband do that. So we would check my Dexcom, and then most of the time we would also prick my finger to make sure Dexcom was right. I will say for the most part, during delivery, during our hospital stay, Dexcom was, I would say probably about 95-ish% right, which is pretty incredible. So that was awesome. The next thing they did when we got in our room, obviously once you dressed down, they would put an IV in you. So you guys know I drink water like a maniac. And for some odd reason, they had a really hard time sticking an IV in me. Like they tried here, and they said one of my valves just kept shutting because I had so much blood flow from the pregnancy. So they tried here, they tried here, they tried here, they tried here. And I think they finally got it in like right here. So it was pretty painful. I was bruised. It just now went away, basically. I was bruised for at least 3 weeks, and then they went away. So that was kind of a traumatizing experience at the beginning, is that you get poked by a needle 4 times before they actually get it. They had 3 different people try it, and the last person tried it twice and finally got it. But we made it. It's okay. So they did put that in me. They didn't hook me up to anything else at first, just because I didn't need anything. They were doing Cytotec, which is where they insert a pill or something vaginally. And then we kind of went from there. So that was the next step, is they inserted that. And I just kind of chilled out. My sugars were a little bit on the lower side, so we were still watching in between like the 60 and the 80 range. I tried to sleep whatever I could, so I'd turn on the TV. My husband had his AirPods, so he would watch videos. I'm not gonna lie, I was hurting a little bit from the trying to get, like, where they stuck me so many times. I was in some serious pain on my left arm, so I would have to have my husband help me a little bit more. But we did have some low sugars. So what happened after that is that we had Cytotec, and then my doctor came in about 3-ish hours later, I want to say, and she checked me, and I was only 1 centimeter dilated. And I was like, with this pain, I feel like I am more than 1 centimeter dilated, but I wasn't. So I went ahead and decided to get an epidural. That was our plan all along, is to get an epidural. Props to you guys who don't get an epidural, but I wanted it 100%. So I got it, and it definitely helped for sure. So they have to give you fluids before they give you an epidural. I want to say it's like 15 to 20 minutes to give you just straight fluids. So they had to hook me up to the IV. Once you get an epidural, you're no longer allowed to leave the bed, so they have to put a catheter inside of you. They also put, after I was 1 centimeter dilated, a Foley balloon, I think it's what it's called. I don't know exactly what it is. All I know, it was insanely painful. And it was pretty bad. So my doctor had a hard time getting the balloon in there because my cervix was so high. So basically it's this balloon that kind of blows up inside of you with saline in it, and it'll fall out when you're like 4-ish centimeters, I think, 4 or 5. So that was rough. That was one of the hardest parts, I will say, was that balloon. It was pretty painful. So after that, they gave me the epidural. So they come in there, and if you guys don't know about an epidural, they stick it in your back. You have to bend over a little bit, cross your legs. At least at my hospital, my husband was not allowed to watch it at all. He had to be straight in front of me, not seeing anything. And then they stuck it in there. I did jump, which I wish I would not have, because that hurt worse. But once they insert it, it doesn't hurt. It just kind of feels like they're getting blood, essentially, just like a little prick. And so I jumped, and that was fun. But then they got it in there. They let me back down. They give you a button, at least in my hospital, to put on your bedside. So if you need to crank up some more, you can. It was glorious, and I got it. So that one definitely helped me to relax. So about a few hours later, my sugars were trending decent. So after the Cytotec, I was allowed to eat the first round of Cytotec. So I ate some Cheez-Its, and unfortunately that did make my sugar go up to like 140, 150-ish. And then I was drinking water. I didn't drink anything else besides water unless my sugar did go down or I was super nauseous. I will say when I did go in at first, I was pretty nauseous. The entire delivery process, I did throw up 3 times. They do give you those bags to throw up in. But I don't honestly remember at what points I threw up. It's kind of all of a blur. And I think it's when I first went in, my sugar was a little bit on the lower side. That was one of the first times. After the Foley balloon came out, I was about 4 centimeters dilated. They also did a second round of cytotech. My doctor inserted it vaginally, and they just kept the process going. When she came back, I want to say I was like a 6 or a 7. No, I was at a 5. So I was at a 5, and I want to say they started Pitocin. So Pitocin is where they give it to you through an IV. It helps with the induction process, so it's basically putting your body into labor. And they kept me on Pitocin for a while. So after Pitocin, we stayed on there for a while. I would get to like a 7 centimeters dilated, and then I would like close up to almost a 5 again. It was super weird. And then I could eat like Jello. I ate Jello a lot. I had a popsicle. I had a few popsicles because I would get like nauseous or super hot. So a popsicle would calm me down, you know, keep me cooler. I would have some Sprite. Other than that, I think that's the main 3 things once I was in active labor that I ate / drank. Yeah, I think so. My husband would go to the cafeteria to get some food for himself. He said he would not eat around me, but when you're that far into labor and you don't feel good, you feel like you're going to throw up, you're in pain, you don't really care if they eat in front of you. And I would rather have my husband beside me than somewhere else. So he came back and he would eat. When they came back and checked me, I kind of moved pretty quickly from like a 6 to a 9. So they didn't have to do anything else besides after the Pitocin. They would do, you know, they just kept flipping me. And those exercises are rough. They would put like this peanut ball in between your legs and kind of like flip you this way, flip it this way. My doctor did come in there once I had the Foley balloon come out, which I'm sorry, this video is like so sporadic, but she came in there and she broke my water. So I honestly am not gonna lie, I didn't really feel her breaking my water, mainly because I had the epidural and my feet really swelled bad with the epidural and I couldn't really move my legs. But after that, I didn't really feel much. Like you would feel a lot of pressure, but that's all I really felt. So from like a 6 to a 9, I started to have more contractions. That's what the Pitocin does. It kind of makes your contractions a lot harder on the body. And by the time I got to 9 centimeters, we were there for like 12-ish plus hours, it felt like. And I want to say it might have been more than 12 hours. I was literally exhausted. So the full time I was in labor was 32 hours with 2.5 hours of pushing. It was exhausting. I will say by the time we got to pushing, my sugars was around the 140s to 160 range. My doctor was aware, my OB was aware the entire time of what my sugar was. Like I said, I did have to keep that log. They come in there, check it, put it in my chart, and just keep an eye on what my sugars would be. When I was a 9.75 or something like that, I told my husband I'm exhausted. Been in labor for like over 30-ish hours. I was kind of done, so I was prepared to have a C-section. So just to let you guys know, if you haven't watched my other videos, you don't have to have a C-section if you're diabetic, unless like your baby is breech or if you are uncontrolled, or unless just there's an issue and you need to have a C-section. Obviously, healthy baby, healthy mama. By the time we got to 9.75, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. It was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pain. You could still feel it even with the epidural. And I was exhausted. So I talked to my nurse. We went through several nurses. Especially with being in labor that long, obviously you're going to have several nurses. Yeah. So I told my nurse, I was basically like, okay, I'm done. My doctor was actually off on that Wednesday. Nope, Tuesday. I had him on a Tuesday. And she was like, okay, she went to go take her daughter or something, or her son, to the doctor. So then she was going to come in and check on me. She came in and checked on me, and I was prepared to be like, okay, let's get a C-section. Let's get this baby out. My body is physically and mentally and emotionally just zonked. So she checked me. They do several cervical checks. And like I said, I was still at that 9.75 or whatever. When my doctor came in, I don't honestly know if I was at a 10 or not, but my son was so incredibly low. They could feel his hair. They could feel how low he was. And as soon as my OB came in and checked me, she was like, okay, yeah, it's time for you to deliver. So I don't know if I actually made it to a 10 because the nurse had just checked me and was like, you're not at a 10, but who knows? I don't know. So they checked my sugar before I started pushing, which I was at a 145, 150-ish range. She did not want it to go much higher than that. By the time I did deliver, I was in the 160 range. And honestly, after I delivered, I stayed in the 160s for a while. I did ask my MFM because she did come to visit me in the hospital why it was like that. And she said, just with all the hormones your body's going through so much, even though like you don't have a lot of insulin going in you and you are literally trying to run a race because it's so exhausting. There's just so many hormones my body didn't react to going down, which I'm glad I didn't have a low sugar during delivery. I just had a little bit of an elevated sugar, which it was okay. One of the things I forgot to mention, as soon as we walked into the hospital, I decreased my insulin by half, which is what my certified diabetes educator did recommend. So as soon as I walked in, I put a temp basal on my Omnipod and decreased it by 50. With Omnipod, you can only do it 12 hours. So I did have to do that multiple times because I was in labor for forever, it felt like. So in the entire time I was in labor, I had to decrease it by 50%. After labor, I had the new basal rates she had set for me. So during delivery, okay, so they get ready. They'd already had the room ready because they thought I was going to deliver a lot sooner, but I stayed at a 9 for a long time. So they had the room ready. My doctor got ready. And next thing we know, my husband is like, I'm going to go get Starbucks. And then he got Starbucks. He comes back and then they're like, okay, let's start pushing. And my husband's like, okay, a lot of work. Yeah, it's fun times. So they get me ready. They put my legs up. It's a whirlwind of an experience. Let's just say that. So I'm hooked up to an IV, and then what my doctor did is I had a nurse on this side. I had my doctor down here, obviously, and then I had my husband right here. And my husband did watch my Dexcom the entire time and kept an eye on if he had to give me insulin if need be. So like I said, it was in between 140 and 160 while I was delivering, which they were like, okay, but it doesn't need to go any higher than that, because that's when they start getting a little bit more concerned with the baby sugar when he comes out. So I pushed for 2.5 hours. It was exhausting. Yeah, I don't really remember a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I remember him coming out. I did have a mirror. I did not want one at first, but my husband was like, you want to see this? And it was literally the most rewarding experience because your body is just so incredibly tired. My doctor did count, so they would have they had handrails right here. You would grab them, lean up, and then hold your breath while you are pushing. So you would get a deep breath, push for 10 seconds, rest, push for 10 seconds, rest, push for 10 seconds, and rest. Sometimes I was able to make it to 4 times instead of just 3. Most of the time it was just 3 though. So after that, we pushed for forever. I could see his head coming out, so I knew we were getting a little bit closer. So all I heard was my doctor saying, hey, Caitlin, you need 4 good pushes and you're gonna have a baby. That is the encouragement that you need during that time. Let me tell you, you need that encouragement because you are so exhausted. So I pushed 4 times, and next thing we know, he came out. It was, there are no words. It just leaves you speechless. They did place him on my chest on a towel, and they wiped him off. They then took him over there to get cleaned off, to get weighed. He was 8 pounds and 12 ounces. So he was a whopper and 21 inches long when he was born. He did have a little jaundice afterwards, after being in the hospital for a couple days. So we did have to get that cleared up, but I did have a 2nd-degree tear, which is not the worst one, thankfully, hallelujah. She said it was a very minimal 2nd-degree tear, so she did have to stitch me up. One of the things after that is they delivered the placenta. So they've taken baby over. They took my husband over so he could go over there and cut the cord. They did have to give my baby a little bit of oxygen whenever he was first born, but after that, he was totally fine. And so he's over there cutting the cord, and then they're delivering the placenta. And let me tell you, that is super, 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 super painful. So having a baby is painful in general, but like I was not expecting the pain of the placenta. So what she would do is she would literally put her hand on my stomach and like push the placenta out, and it is exhausting. I did have to push, I think it's once, maybe twice to get the placenta out, but you could definitely hear when the placenta came out because it sounded very, 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 very gross. My husband saw it and he was like, oh gosh, that was bad. So yeah, fun times. That one was pretty painful. She stitched me up and then they did a skin to skin pretty much immediately. So my sugars was in the 160s. I want to say it was like 163 the entire rest of the time I was in the delivery room until they moved me into a mother and baby suite. And I didn't necessarily have to do any insulin for it. I think I might have did one correction dose, but they were not worried about it. Once you have the baby out, I mean, if your sugars are a little bit elevated, it's okay, per the doctors that were in there. So we tried breastfeeding. So they lay him on you, and then they have, at least at my hospital, they had someone come in. I guess she was from the nursery. She wasn't a lactation person, but she came in and she helped me get him latched. He latched immediately. He latched great. He fed for like 20 minutes. One of the things about breastfeeding and or pumping with type 1 diabetes is it takes a toll, like a huge toll on your sugars, which I was not prepared for. I will do a separate video on breastfeeding / pumping with type 1 diabetes because I want you guys to be aware of how much it can affect your sugars. It will plummet them super quickly. So I have realized postpartum. But yeah, so he latched, he was great. And then we stayed in there for 30-ish minutes, an hour. They took my gown off and where it had some blood on it. And we went to a mother and baby suite. They rolled me over there. I was able to hold the baby the entire time. And due to COVID and stuff like that, at my hospital, they don't really have a nursery because they're trying to protect other babies, which is totally fine. So our baby stayed with us pretty much the entire stay in the hospital. They did take him like 3 hours one night due to it's getting time for him to eat. Due to do like a hearing test and blood work, and they also have to prick their heel several times, especially being a type 1 diabetic mom, which hurts your little heart. But I will say he passed all of his sugars, which is great. I'll also do another video on that so you know like what to prepare for if you are a type 1 diabetic mom. But they took his sugars, they did everything, but he has been such a great baby. The delivery experience was a long one for sure, but definitely rewarding. He is literally the most precious thing in the world, and we are so glad to have him. And we're so glad that like we were able to deliver vaginally. I'm pretty much healed for the most part. I go to the doctor in a few weeks just to have my postpartum checkup, make sure all the tear and everything is healed down there. But yeah, everything has been good. I know my doctor has been keeping an eye on my sugars. While I was also there, my MFM came to check on my sugars. Even while I was in the mother and baby suite, I still had to log all of my sugars. So that was a little bit exhausting. So every hour, every 2 hours, I would have to log them with pen and paper, and they'd have to put it in my chart so the doctors could see it. But other than that, everything has been great. I am so thankful to have a baby. I'm so thankful that we had a decent delivery experience. I'm even more, grateful and thankful that we're both very healthy. He's healthy, I'm healthy, we're healing. And it's been such a great experience. So if you guys have any questions about delivery or your sugars, leave them in the comments below so I can help you. Obviously, your experience won't be the same as my experience, but I'd be happy to share some more input or how I kept controlling my sugars during delivery. I have a lot of video ideas I plan on doing before I go back to work, which I plan on going back to work in about a month. So get some videos out to you guys about postpartum, breastfeeding, and then sugars. So I'm going to get off of here because he's starting to get a little bit on the fussy side. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Bye, guys.